What's going on? Live well check. So I'm here. I'm actually in Columbus, Ohio. We have a hockey tournament down here. My Rams play tonight. Yes, I'm a Seattle fan. Yes, I'm a Rams fan. I followed Marshall Falk when he was with the Colts and he broke the rushing record in the Pro Bowl. I think it was like 175 or 160 some yards of rushing in the Pro Bowl. And I said, that guy's cool. So I followed him. And about a year later, he was traded to the Rams. And the Rams went on and had major success. I was still younger. So I wound up being a Rams fan. So my Rams are playing tonight. Good luck to any of the teams out there that are still in the playoffs. But that's what we're doing. Um, so while we're down here at a hockey tournament, this is my son's hockey team and sporting a little bit of that garb. I always stop at Dick's Sporting Goods, Dunham's, Ollie's, anywhere where you can get some baits. Always. I always got to stop. I got to check the bargain bins. I got to check for colors, stuff on clearance, new stuff, old stuff. It's always a good idea, especially in Ohio. Right now, it's like 12 degrees. With wind chill, it's like minus a million degrees. It's Antarctica. There was actually a polar bear in the parking lot out there earlier. We had to wait to go out and hang out with the team for a while because the polar bear was out there in downtown Columbus. It is that cold. So I grabbed a couple things from Dick's, and I know that these aren't necessarily new, but it did remind me of a story I want to tell you guys when I show you something. So there's two gets it or two baits. One was on clearance. Got the old coffee tube. This color is called white, and it's like purple gold. It's a white illusion, purple gold. Let's bust that out. If I could ever get a grip on it, just like my life. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that cool? That's a really cool color. I know I have some stuff that's very similar at home. I probably have these exact ones. I do like that coffee scent. It's not fully coffee. It's got that plastisol scent. That's a good color. Now, a lot of times when I get my tubes, I usually get the 3.5 to 4 inch. I like the flipping tubes. Even when I'm dragging tubes for smallies, I like the bigger tube. But smaller tubes obviously are really good too. 3.5 is a very good in between. I do like those. This color is going to be great for when bait fish are around a lot, or the emerald shiners if you're going to drag it on the Great Lakes or anything like that, shad. Um, it could be good in clear or dingy water. This is probably supposed to be a little bit better in the real clear water because it's a translucent type color, but it's got the purple and gold. I like these a lot. These types of colors, I think they get overlooked at times because they are a bait fish. And you'd think, well, guys are dragging tubes, kind of looks like a crawfish, bait fish, a goby. That why would this get overlooked? I don't know. But even when I bring my tube box of just like general tubes that I'm gonna throw on any given day, unless I'm for sure they're on something weird, right? And I do have some weird colors. I think it's good to have some of those random colors. A lot of guys don't carry like the pearl white or the all white or the salt and pepper. I always have like a salt and pepper, some sort of translucent white or shad color in there. And that I think is something that, you can put underneath your lid, as one of those secrets. Yeah. So that color. Now, my favorite color all time of tube, I bought these. I have a few of these. I just like this color. Is your black gold. Few companies make these. Right? They call it black gold. The plastic is more like a smoke, like a dark melon. It's a very good color. It's good, I've found, in any clarity of water, and it imitates gobies very well. It imitates your crawdads, and it just silhouettes very well. It's natural. It's very unassuming. Um, this is also a 3.5 coffee tube. Oh, I love the smell. But that color, that's one of my favorite colors. The things that I did want to show you, and it wasn't really those, and that's these are very important. And I'm gonna do a video on tubes here pretty soon, especially after I did that Dion Hibden video. I came across something that I personally have never seen. Oh, for fuck's sake. I've never seen these. And maybe you guys are familiar with them. I haven't looked them up to see how long they've been out. I've been out of tournament fishing for a couple years now. I get called every once in a while to join in a team tournament or do a buddy tournament. Once in a while, I'll get messages from like the automated services, BFL, stuff like that, to see if I want to come back, and they're looking for co-anglers and stuff. But I'm just really busy with hockey, baseball, track. But this is the Micro UV Crawl. Now I don't know how long they've been out. They might be brand new. They could be a year or two old. I don't know. But the last I knew, these weren't really being produced. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the UV Crawl from Zoom. And the story I have is about these, but I do want to show you this. And there's a Magnum UV Crawl. This is just the UV Crawl in general. This is the UV Crawl, which a lot of guys think is a very small, subtle bait in the first part. But now you have the micro. And I think that there's a lot of sneaky stuff that can be done with this. You know, put on drop shot or Ned rig. You know, I'm pretty sure it was probably designed more for Ned rig. Nico rig, maybe. It's a little small. I mean, you could still Nico rig it. But I think this could be really cool. And something that you guys have to know if you're fishing the UV crawl, right? I fish a lot of these, and I have a story about these. I've caught a lot of fish on these. Is you can take a hole punch, paper punch, and punch right there where this meets. I don't know how well you can see it. Right at that slit, right there, you can punch a hole there or cut it with scissors. And it'll actually make it vibrate just a little bit easier. And that's your watermelon candy. And this one is green pumpkin magic. Green pumpkin magic. It's similar to watermelon candy. It's got like a hologram flake in it, and it's just watermelon. So the story I want to tell is about these. I had some of those in my bag. I'm very much a plastics and jig guy. I feel that when fish are active, they'll hit plastics. And when fish are inactive, they'll hit plastics. They're natural. Even when the bite is really subtle, they hold it in their mouth longer. They do tend to get swallowed, and they do tend to get all sorts of sizes of fish. You know, a lot of people would say, "Oh, your jigs produce bigger fish and your plastics smaller fish." That is true. But when you're trying to find where fish are or find the mood that they're in, not a bad idea to start off with a plastic, which is a lot of times what I'll do is I'll have a Texas rig plastic on and a jig. The jig would be for maybe where you think bigger fish would be, if you've already got a limit, or if you're catching a ton of fish and you're trying to weed through some of the smaller ones, you're 13 to 15 inches and you're trying to maybe get a 3-pounder, maybe put this down, maybe pick the jig up. My buddy and I were fishing in a tournament in a lake, and it was a buddy tournament. It's a no-wake lake. Actually, I fished out of that lake quite a few times in a John boat, converted bass boat. And I had some of those in my bag. I always have rubber worms and stuff, and I was throwing around a jig. I had started getting really good with a jig around this time frame. I was starting to figure out size and design a little bit better and understanding how to get bites and quality bites. Um, I had caught fish on jigs throughout my life, but I had really started dialing it in. So I had a jig tied on, I was flipping around. The guy I fished with had a jig tied on, was flipping around. We're throwing crankbaits, buzz baits a little bit, and I can't remember who got the first bite. I I want to say him. He was in the front of the boat. Once again, it was a team tournament. But a lot of times he's throwing a jig instead of plastics, right? He's all or nothing guy. And I believe I had something like this on because I was trying to imitate bluegill, right? And I'll get to it in a second. So I had this on, and I had gotten a couple bites, and they didn't fully commit. I caught a couple. Well, he picked up his Texas rig rod and threw some of these on. He had a bunch of these, and we had two colors in the boat: green pumpkin candy and watermelon candy. The same thing. It's basically purple and green flake, just different plastic color. And we started throwing it around. And there is one other little tip: is we were putting orange right here on the pinchers. He's the one that started doing that, orange on the pincher, just a little bit. And we had bluegill all over and stuff, and it was early summer, and it was like you turn the light switch on. I'm talking 12 incher, 14 incher, 13 incher, 12 incher, and keeper size up there is 14 inches. And we just started pounding fish. You know, we went from a few bites, and we were fishing the same area, that we got a few bites and we caught some. Is he said, you know what? I'm gonna motor out into the channel, because there was one big lake, there was a channel, and it you can't really tell it's a channel unless you really look at it or you know the lake. It just looks like a connection from one lake to another. It doesn't get real narrow or anything, but it is. It's an old channel, and it goes to another part of the lake. He said, I'm gonna motor out, trolling motor out to the like deep part of this channel. I'm gonna go back to this point and start back in this cove where I felt like I had a couple bites on this, and we're both gonna throw that, right? And I think we had like maybe one keeper in the boat, and we were going right through where we just threw spinner baits, we just threw jigs, and you'd say, oh, it's a bite window. Okay, and it was still early in the morning. Like, we're talking, it was probably 7:15. We had been fishing for about 45 minutes, but we started back there, and we're flipping around and throwing spinner baits, like I said, jigs, just everything, normal morning stuff, poppers, walking baits, a little bit of a frog, and we weren't really doing any damage. And I got a couple bites on that. So we start going back through, and once again, it was like the light switch turned on. I flipped to some weeds, and the line started walking out, set the hook. It was like a 15 incher. Throw it in the box. And then all of a sudden he's on, and he thinks it's a decent one. So he's like, get the net. Well, I had just flipped out. So then I go to get the net, and he gets it up towards the boat, and I go to get it in the net. And, in team fishing, one of us takes the trolling motor, but you're also trying to be quick. So like, I get it in the boat, and I went back to my rod, and I'm reeling up, and there's a fish on it. Boom, set the hook. And he's all tangled up in the net, right? He's got the net down here. He's getting the fish unhooked, and and I'm like, I'm on. And I'm trying to reel it in. And I boat flip it, and it's about a 15 incher. So we're catching a bunch of cookie cutters. And then it was like every flip, and we're talking, it was a stretch, just every flip, every flip, every flip. And we just kept catching fish and catching fish and catching fish. There was something about this, because I tried to then, on another rod where I had a jig, I had been throwing the jig. I decided, you know what? Maybe they're not on the jig. Maybe they're not on the jig. Maybe I'll just throw a big worm. And we tried a few different things, and we really couldn't get bit on anything else except for this exact bait, this color, this size. and orange pinchers. You could get bit without the orange pincher, but there was something about the orange pinchers. And I'm telling you what, it was it was insane. It was just you go through this canal and you catch fish, and you go over here and you catch fish. And I remember missing one that I could tell was really big the way it bit, and it bit really hard, and I felt it heavy. And when I reeled down to set the hook, because what it had done when I flipped to these the grass line right at the edge of that canal or that channel, is that it had bit and went like this out towards the boat. So I was trying to catch up, and as I was reeling down to set the hook, and you're trying to catch up to it, it's already had the bait in its mouth for a little bit. I could feel the weight, and when I went to set the hook, it had just started spitting it out because it bowed me up just a little bit and come unbuttoned, and I could tell it was a good one. Now, was it a bass? I don't know, because there's muskie and stuff in this lake. Could have been a walleye, who knows? It probably was a bass. It was a big one, and it was on this little dude here, fishing through same area where they weren't catching any on a jig. But this ultraviolet speed crawl, there was something about it that day they wanted, and with the orange pinchers, there was something about that orange flash, just a little bit. Didn't have to be a lot. Um, we fished all over the lake for that entire day. I wound up catching about a 13 or 14-inch crappie on this exact bait. I don't know how many other fish we caught, but it was just one of those days. And we go through this canal. We go back into this other part of the lake. I don't know the lake really well. I've only fished it a couple times when I was a kid. This is only his second time fishing it. The first time he went there just to kind of motor around a little bit and see how long it took to get from the boat ramp to like other areas around the lake, because it was idle only. And, so he kind of had an idea. And I told him some areas where I had fished when I was younger, and that looked good to me. And he said the same thing. So we go back to this other lake through that canal. We already had 5 in the box. Our big ones maybe 3, 3.5. And we go back, and there's a big flat with hard bottom, and there's grass clumps all over. So where you'd get these rocks, you weren't getting grass, but in between, like the sand and stuff, you'd have these clumps or little patches of grass. And they were just loaded in there. It didn't matter where you threw, you just throw and they were there, throw and they were there, throw and they were there. And we were catching fish left and right. Well, we had worked around in the back of this cove in this flat, and we're weaving our way back out. So we kind of worked one way, and it was real shallow, so you could only get through like an old creek channel almost, and it was only about 3 foot deep. And if you got much outside of that, it was 1.5 foot. We're in this 21-foot bass boat, and so we flip around, and what we would do is we'd fan cast, and these fish were sitting up in 8-10 inches of water sometimes in those grass clumps, and you couldn't always see them. It was partly cloudy, and the clouds would cover up the water a little bit and make it dark, and you couldn't really see. And then when the light would come out, you'd see these dark spots all over, and you'd throw to them, and you no sooner you throw, it would either hit the water or hit the bottom, and one boom was on it, and they were on it. And I had to go pee. I'm in the back of this guy's boat. I gotta take a leak. I'm like, dude, I got a leak. I gotta take a pee. He goes, well, let it go. We're not moving, right? Like we just were sitting there. No power pole or anything. The wind wasn't really blowing like crazy. He just turned the trolling motor off, kicked the motor up. So I'm like, all right, dude, I gotta go. And he's like, make it quick because moving up. And you never know if is it a bite window? Is it something magical we found that day? Is everybody else pounding them? We have no idea, right? So we're just trying to capitalize. And dude, I'll tell you what, I I threw my bait out there, right, and I kind of bounced it around a little bit. Nothing. And I was like, I gotta go. So instead of reeling in, I set the rod behind my leg over here, kind of like this, pointed like this. And I'm got my hand on top of the big motor, which for any of your co-anglers or anybody fishing with your buddies, always hold on to something. My balance is very good, but he likes to take off with the trolling motor. Sometimes guys do that to dump you. Sometimes they do it because they forget. I don't want to go take a drink. I don't care. It's 90 some degrees that day. I got my hand on the motor and my rod's over here, like kind of behind my arm a little bit, balance on my leg, leaning out towards the outboard, and I'm doing my thing, right? Squeezing the lemon. And he starts motoring up a little bit. And I was like, hey, hold on, right? And I'm peeing. Well, as he's motoring, he goes, I'm just moving up about 10 feet so I can make some more casts up here. He's like, hurry up, right? And we're bickering at each other. And as he's pulling forward, now having my hands like this on the motor, my rod starts going like that. And I look up and it kind of jumps. And it's not real thick weeds out there, but there's patches. So I go to take my rod and I can feel a fish like running with it. So I just grab like that far down from the top of my rod and I just pull back. And I hook this thing. I don't even know how big it is. I got everything hanging out. I can't even do anything. And I was like, dude. And he's like, what's going on? I was like, stop moving. I got a fish. I got a fish. And he's like, you're kidding me. I'm literally still peeing. So I stopped peeing. And, I try to put everything away, grab my rod, and I'm holding it. And this fish is pulling. He's got me now buried in a clump of weeds, and I'm wenching him out of there. And I'm hooting and hollering, hey, dude, hey, like, stop moving the trolling motor. And my zipper's down and get the fish up, and it's like 2 3/4. And I flip him in the boat, and he's laughing. He was like, you really had a fish on? I said, yeah, dude. I said, I cast it out and I jigged it a little bit, and I was trying to save time, so I was just peeing real quick so that I could finish my cast. And then when you started moving the trolling motor, my baits, this little dude is at the bottom, just kind of skipping around the bottom. Boom, one come up and hit it and basically hooked himself, and it was a good time. We wound up that day. We easily won that tournament. Now we didn't have a big weight, but we estimate we probably caught, I don't know, 70, 65, 70, maybe 75 bass between the two of us that day. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking southern Michigan, no wake lake, 90 some degrees. But the biggest thing is that everybody that came in, there was very few people that had limits, right? These are good fishermen, guys that fish, drop shots, and they fish tubes a lot. They know how to crank. They know the lake better than us. They fish, shaky heads, all that stuff. Ned rigs. There's very few limits that were weighed in. And most of them were around southern Michigan, northern Ohio. If it's a 14-inch keeper limit, your smallest limit is going to be probably 6 pounds. Not on Lake Erie, but it'll be about 6 pounds, right? It could be 10 pounds. Most 14-inch fish are going to be pushing at least 1.5 pounds or up. A lot of these guys only had 5-6 pounds. I think we wound up weighing together. We weighed like 13 pounds. So we lapped everybody. But on top of that, most of these guys only caught 3 or 4 fish that day. Or the guys that say, yeah, we caught 10 or 20, but not a one of them was over 10 inches. We were on something magical. And I don't know what it was. I've caught a lot of fish on these since then. These have always been a staple. They obviously look a little bit like a craw, but they represent those small bluegill. The small bluegill. After the bluegill spawn, those runts when you get little stunted bluegill growth, in those lakes that have heavy bluegill pressure from fishermen. Your warmouths, stuff like that. Green sunfish for you science heads. This is a good bait. It has enough action. Even in dingy water, it works really well. It kicks a little bit. Very good in clear water. But I want to say that we probably ran out of 6 packs of UV craws. It got so bad towards the end of the day that we were trying to pick up UV craws off the bottom of the boat, and we're like, oh, it's not too bad right there. And we'd bite it off and just use here, and our hooks are barely small enough to fit in there. Using, having to go down and use 2/0 hooks, and it was just a lot of fun. So ever since then, I've been a big proponent. If you're fishing, anytime the water gets a little warmer, have some UV craws and some of that orange marker or orange dip and glow. Spike it. It's key. It's key. And this lake doesn't have contour lines on maps. So this is not something that you're able to just go out and do whatever and be like, oh, the fish should be here, should be here. You have to go fish it. There was no live scope. This was very much years and years ago. This was probably 8 years ago. But it was a lot of fun. It was one of the most memorable days I ever had fishing. Caught a big crappie, almost caught a muskie, caught tons of bass, had a lot of fun with my buddy. We did have a couple of good ones on. That one that bowed me up, and he had one that he couldn't get to fully commit on a poppin' frog. But UV crawl has played a part in a lot of fishing of mine ever since then, and not just this color. Straight black, trailer. I have some, I want to say they call it shell cracker, that I use in shad lakes, and they're just a really good bait. But, to give another look at this micro, I'm really excited to see what I can possibly do with that this summer. But yeah, I just want to make this little video and show you guys some of the stuff we're doing down here. I'm recording, but I wanted to tell that story, and it's so cold out. Can't really do anything with fishing. I can do some rigging videos and stuff like that, but sometimes these stories I think are kind of entertaining, and they show you a little bit of a look behind the curtain, when guys are out there fishing and what kind of runs through their head. Trying to mimic a bluegill. That's the color and the size, trying to get some bites, but it has produced some good ones too. So the UV craw, they wouldn't hit the jig, but they'd hit that. Wouldn't hit the worm, but they'd hit that. Wouldn't hit a spinnerbait, but they'd hit that. Not sure why that day it was so deadly. I've had one other time where I was using these a lot and I just tore some fish up. That's a story for another day. And that was a practice tournament. But yeah, I'm just going to continue putting some stuff on YouTube and putting some videos out talking about fishing, tips, old stories, funny stories. But remember, make a cast even when you got to pee. And sometimes that leads to a bite. We call that the pee pattern, I guess. But I'll catch you guys another time. This is Talking Fishing.